Known for its methodical 3D fighting and boatloads of cultured fan service, the Dead or Alive series is one that I've covered numerous times on the channel, but despite having played all of the mainline entries, there's one title in particular that I've yet to sink my teeth into. One so explicit that I was never allowed to buy it. Get this, I'm inside of EB Games as a kid looking for something new to grab, and after making my way to the 3DS section, I spot what looks to be a fighting game. Before I can even read its name, my mum looks at the cover and tells me that I would never be allowed to play it. That game was Dead or Alive Dimensions, and upon reflection, I think the smallest portion of Kasumi's leg being exposed was enough to tip her over the scale. Now that I'm an adult with a penchant for mature content, no one can stop me from playing this M-rated experience, and by the way, an M rating in Australia, which is where I'm from, is similar to America's T rating, so there was never anything to be concerned about, really. That might seem like a funny story, but you know who else had a problem with Dead or Alive Dimensions? My country's government.
It's okay to have consensual relations between humans and animals.
Seriously, Dimensions was temporarily banned from being sold in Australia, as well as Sweden, so for the longest time I've been meaning to investigate this game for myself and see if it was worthy of being banned. I'll tell you how this tale of censorship ended later on, but for now, let's start at the beginning as we explore the world of Dead or Alive Dimensions. After an increase in popularity following 1999's Dead or Alive 2, series creator Tomonobu Itagaki was on top of the universe, and part of his plan for world domination included getting all buddy-buddy with Microsoft. No longer would Hayabusa and friends appear on the PlayStation, as from Dead or Alive 3 onwards, the franchise, along with Ninja Gaiden, would remain Xbox exclusives. This was due to a multitude of reasons, with the most important being that Idigaki viewed the original Xbox as the most powerful 6th generation console. This union between Japan and America continued for as long as Idigaki remained at Tecmo, which wasn't long as he left the company in 2008 over unreceived bonus payments. With the father of Dead or Alive gone, its future seemed rocky as it no longer had a central figure to preside over its development. On the other hand, Tecmo was going strong in the 2010s, including teaming up with Nintendo to co-develop Metroid Other M. Now, I'm sure you know how Metroid's fanbase views this game, but what's important to us now is that one of its directors was Yosuke Hayashi, a developer on both Dead or Alive 3 and 4. Along with Yohei Shimbori, who worked on DOA Ultimate and 4, they were chosen to take the series to new heights following Itagaki's departure, meaning Dimensions was the first title in the series to be developed without Itagaki's involvement. According to an interview with GameSpot, Hayashi revealed that Dead or Alive Dimensions was created as sort of a compilation, one that incorporates beloved features and characters from previous installments while not overwhelming new players. Its 3DS exclusivity stems from Team Ninja aiming to provide their fanbase with a portable experience that could reacquaint them with the franchise. It's important to note that at this point, the previous DOA game was released 5 years ago, so releasing something new to reintroduce the series to fighting game players was a clever idea. Since this is a first step in the reboot of DOA, we are focused on making it approachable to both the fans of the series and newcomers. The concept of this game is, one more time, one more fight. It projects the fact that we wanted to gather together all our fans for another bout, and also reunite fighting game fans who got tired of playing and left fighting games. This sounds like a fantastic PR statement, but when you really think about it, Hayashi is essentially saying that Dimensions was being developed for everybody. In my view, creating a work of art with this mindset is risky as, and I'm sure you've heard this before, if you aim to appeal to everybody, you end up appealing to nobody. In order to prevent this from occurring, developers who had never worked on DOA before were brought on to provide new ways of thinking about its features. New ones include touchscreen controls and the 3D display, with the former being designed so that players could cut back on memorization. I remember playing the sparring mode for countless hours because I needed to memorize my favorite character's techniques. Even so, a week later I would forget a few of those combos and would have to go through them again. Taking these experiences into consideration, the team decided to give players a chance to enjoy the beauty of 3D fighting games without having to work out too much to get to this level. While thinking about this feature, we came to a sudden realization that the bottom screen of the 3DS is sitting there doing nothing, so we decided that displaying the tech list on the touchscreen is the only way to go. Players will be able to touch on the screen to execute tech right there and then. As the 3DS was, named after its three-dimensional display, it's a no-brainer as to why Dimensions makes use of it for aesthetic purposes, but when asked by IGN about how this would impact gameplay, Hayashi replied by stating, "I'll leave it to your imagination. I think that all of us men out there will not be disappointed." Now that's a man who understands Dead or Alive. When looking for any anecdotes about development troubles, all I could find was Hayashi claiming that developing a brand new title for hardware Team Ninja had never worked with before posed some trouble, although working through these problems was enjoyable. If you were a DOA fan, this would have been an awesome time to live through. These fresh developers were resurrecting the series from its brief hiatus, and had even begun development on the next mainline entry, but you know who wasn't happy? Idigaki. Yep, the big boss himself replied to a fan on Facebook about his experience in the games industry, as well as dealing with the death of his mentor, and although the message is genuinely heartfelt, it quickly becomes incendiary. You say that DOA 5 was the start of the problems, or nightmare, but I think it started with DOA Dimensions. I could sense it just minutes after turning the power on, and I immediately had to turn it off. Combos aren't something that you do with a touch panel. If you're familiar with Idigaki's public track record, you'll be aware of his nature to talk trash about other people's works, but I feel that this was personal. He was with the series from the very beginning, so to see other developers put their spin on things and break his Xbox exclusivity rule probably rubbed him the wrong way. With that said, Dimensions was representative of a bright future for the series, one that would be under new management for as many platforms as possible. A competitive fighting game receiving a new entry exclusively on a handheld without the involvement of its creator doesn't sound great on paper, but how does it feel to play? Does it still have the spirit of Dead or Alive? Like with any game in this genre, Dead or Alive Dimensions lives and dies by its fighting mechanics, and thankfully not much has changed from the mainline entries. In addition to the usual 3-dimensional movement options, players have access to 4 buttons: punch, kick, block, and throw. It might seem like a small number of actions would lead to Dimensions lacking game depth, but this is far from the truth. All sorts of pokes, reversals, combos, and whatever else you can think of can be utilized by smart players at various ranges, with every character having unique ways to interact with the universal system mechanics. Speaking of which, the triangle and hold systems are the backbone of DOA's battle system, and their allure hasn't been lost on the 3DS. In layman's terms, the triangle mechanic is comparable to rock, paper, scissors, where strikes beat throws, throws beat holds, and holds beat strikes. If you execute one of these power imbalances with the right timing, you'll often be rewarded with extra damage and combo potential. Now, this isn't super important to learn when you're just playing casually with friends, but it's an essential component of high-level strategy in competitive play. Just to go into more detail about holds now, they can be used in neutral and during hit stun. Say your opponent is throwing out an attack and you want to escape the hit after already taking some damage. If you press back and hold, you can catch their strike and turn it against them. Let me tell you, this is one of my favorite mechanics in any fighting game, as despite its simple execution, it can have major ramifications on your opponent's strategy. Like with Killer Instinct's combo breakers, holds force both fighters to avoid predictable attack patterns, challenging them to switch up their game plan. On the surface, this system might seem slightly overpowered, but it can easily be defeated by impatience. Beginner and intermediate players often fall into the trap of desperately throwing out holds when on low health, but if they're properly baited, it's lights out. To make matters more intense, the stage itself can either be your best friend or your worst enemy depending on your positioning. Like with any fighting game, the threat of having your back to the wall can be deadly, but you also have to watch out for stage transitions and uneven terrain. Both elements will impact when and where players throw out specific moves, and if you have the right read, your opponent can be punished severely. For those wanting to take DOA seriously, it's quite helpful to possess at least a basic understanding of stage layouts and hazards, as failing to capitalize on them can leave a lot of damage on the table. All of this is wonderful, there's nothing wrong with it, but what impresses me the most is how perfect it all feels on the 3DS. Dimensions isn't a gimped version of Dead or Alive that was quickly thrown together to capitalize on Nintendo's new handheld. Rather, it's a lovingly crafted recreation of what made the series so beloved on home consoles. The 3DS's circle pad isn't the most accurate for movement, but I found that the D-pad worked fine, and the size of the system's buttons didn't affect my gameplay too much. It runs great too, as I didn't notice any performance drops, at least when the 3D features were disabled. They can make cinematic camera angles look more dynamic, but the quick nature of DOA demands maximum visual clarity, and I found the game to feel far more precise in a traditional 2D viewing format. Also, you might be wondering about the bottom screen, and in addition to displaying the aforementioned move lists, you can even touch specific strings to perform them. Even sequences that require multiple inputs in succession can be activated with the touch of a button, and this reminds me of the touch controls in Super Street Fighter 4 3D Edition. In that game, you only have 4 attacks to choose from, but Dimensions gives you what looks like an entire move list. Theoretically, you could play the game just fine by using one hand for movement and the other for touchscreen attacks. They remove all the execution required for combos and chain throws, so I can imagine that some more hardcore fans of the game wouldn't be happy with this feature. Look, in my view, no one was ever going to play this game competitively, especially not for money, so outside of ranked matches online, I don't think this would have bothered anyone. I actually had heaps of fun messing around with the touchscreen features in training mode, despite how busted some of these moves can be when you remove their motion inputs. On the topic of moves, they belong to DOA's colourful fighters, and at the time, this roster was the largest in series history. Most of the characters must be unlocked by completing the story mode, which we'll cover soon, stay tuned, but they all feel right at home on the 3DS, both in aesthetics and gameplay. If you've mastered the intricacies of a fighter in previous games, your skills will thankfully carry over to this game, allowing experienced players to jump right in. For those with limited exposure to DOA, its systems and characters remain accessible as ever, ensuring all demographics receive the full experience. Honestly, there's not much for me to complain about when discussing Dimension's core gameplay. It really does feel like a console-quality 3D fighter in the palm of your hands, and there were times that I forgot I was playing a portable game. Fights are entertaining, inputs are responsive, and the frame rate holds its own during intensive sequences, making me wonder what kind of black magic Team Ninja used to pull it all off. As Dimensions is a portable title from over a decade ago, I wasn't expecting it to have much content going in, but I was pleasantly surprised to find that this is far from the truth. Team Ninja went all out in jam-packing their game full of replay value, and I view this as one of its best qualities. In addition to self-explanatory modes like arcade, survival, CPU battles, etc., there's a highly detailed set of training features. You can instruct the dummy to behave in accordance to all sorts of actions, making it useful for improving your game knowledge, and for a 3DS game, I'm honestly impressed that there are this many options. Hell, there's even a way to view frame data, and although this looks nowhere near as clean as modern frame displays, it's still awesome to have. When looking at these options individually, they can be found all over the genre, but to have them all at once in a portable game? Yeah, this is solid. After putting in all that work in the lab, it's only natural that you'd want to test your skills against another player in Dimension's local or online battles. The former makes use of two 3DS systems within close proximity, and the latter can be enjoyed all over the world. With how internet speeds have improved over the past 15 years, I can't imagine that the 2011 delay-based netcode would have been amazing, but it's nice to have. There isn't much information detailing the specifics of how the title handled online battles, and as Nintendo killed their old features in 2024, there's no way for me to test this out. On a lighter note, remember taking your 3DS for walks to earn some Street Pass points, as well as using Spot Pass to earn new content online? I do, and I fear for future generations who will never have an experience this pure. Anyway, Throwdown mode makes great use of these built-in features, as it allows players to challenge the ghost data of other players who they come across in real life. This sounds enjoyable in theory, but as its use is tied to literally moving past people in the real world who happen to have a 3DS and the game on their person, I don't think that many players were able to utilize Throwdown to its full potential. Additionally, free DLC outfits were rewarded to players who completed extra challenges, and thanks to the Free Step Dodge website hosting these files, they've been prevented from becoming lost to time. All characters have 2 outfits by default, but the DLC adds way more, and as Ayane gets her classic costume with the giant ribbon back, I can't complain, especially because I can use it in showcase mode. This lets you pose character models to take 3D photos, and it reminds me a lot of the same feature in Granblue. You need to unlock models and backgrounds by grinding out the other modes, but if that's not something you're interested in, there will be little reason for you to return here. Positioning the camera can also feel a little bit awkward at times, but overall it's still a neat mode. Finally, and I saved this one for last on purpose, Chronicle is Dimension's campaign mode, and it contains the storylines from Dead or Alive 1 through 4, as well as serving as a tutorial. I went through the entire mode the other day just to unlock some characters, and although I can't follow the plotline to save my life, I had a decent amount of fun. Generally speaking, Chronicle mode is very well made, and it even contains numerous cutscenes, but its structure is highly repetitive. From beginning to end, you're forced into the typical fight, cutscene, repeat formula that fighting games tend to employ for their narratives, and none of these fights are that challenging either. It feels more like a 2-hour-long arcade ladder rather than a story mode, but on the other hand, I'm not sure if it was possible for the developers to include something more ambitious. Their priority would obviously have been to nail the core fighting mechanics and making sure there were no performance issues during moment-to-moment gameplay. I don't mean to be too negative about Chronicle mode, because even though it's nothing I haven't seen before, it still beats out Super Street Fighter 4 3D Edition and Tekken 3D Prime Edition, neither of which contain proper story modes. Overall, I can imagine players of all skill levels being engaged when deciding to indulge in some DOA on the go, as all the modes make up something far greater than the sum of their parts. There's a lot of really good replay value here. When DOA Dimensions released nearly 15 years ago as of me recording this video, where did the time go, it was heralded as a solid portable fighter and currently boasts a Metacritic score of 79. This doesn't make it the most critically acclaimed 3DS fighter, but it's not the lowest rated either, so not bad, Team Ninja. Dimension's technical yet accessible gameplay, replayability, and production values were universally praised, and as the 3DS had only been out for a few months at the time of its release, it showed that Team Ninja already had a comprehensive understanding of how to develop for Nintendo's hardware. With that said, things weren't perfect, as virtually all review outlets directed criticism towards the game's online features, story mode, and 3D capabilities. Console fighting games from the early 2010s weren't known for having the best online play, so it should come as no surprise that their portable cousins were home to inferior networking. From this point on, I would normally stay on topic and go in-depth about specific review quotes, but I feel that now is the best time to revert back to the Australia and Sweden bans. They all stem from their respective countries' politicians feeling that the game depicted underage characters in a suggestive light, with Kasumi, Kokoro, and Ayane being the prime suspects. In a statement reported to Eurogamer, Nintendo's Swedish publishing company, Bergsala, claimed that despite wanting to release the game in their region, Nintendo of Europe decided to leave Sweden in the dark. The reasoning for this is something we'll get to in a bit, but I would like to return home to Australia for a moment. In the beginning, Dead or Alive Dimensions earned a PG, our second lowest age rating, putting it on par with older Street Fighter and Marvel vs. Capcom titles. After this happened, the world continued as normal and everybody just kind of went on with their lives, but not the media. You see, after catching wind of the ban in Sweden, major news publications began releasing articles that painted the game as a sort of moral blight on society. One such article even labelled it as something that I refuse to say on YouTube, but just know that this phrase can easily be abbreviated to Club Penguin. If you know, you know. Now, I have to clarify, this next thing isn't a bit, it's real, it happened with 100% certainty, and I can't even believe I have to say this. During a case from 2008 where a dude was caught in possession of The Simpsons no clue how the government catches you with that, New South Wales Justice Michael Adams deemed that owning suggestive artwork of underage yet fictional characters was enough to warrant charges being pressed against the possessor, and this incident was used as legal precedent for the removal of DOA Dimensions. This turned out to be the same reasoning for the Sweden ban, as if we go by legal standards, this technically meant that owning a copy of DOA meant that you were breaking the law. Even after Nintendo of Australia disputed this claim, our ratings board removed its classification, meaning it could no longer be sold legally. That's right, Dead or Alive, which at this point had zero issues being on Australian store shelves, was now in the same category as Manhunt, with an archived page from the Australian classification website confirming as much. Now, you might be wondering, well, if the ratings board knew what was in Dimensions, why did they allow the game to be made available in the first place? And that's the thing, they didn't. The people behind rating video games in this country don't actually play them. Instead, they rely on the game's publishers to provide them with information that explains context behind potentially explicit material. On June 10th, 2011, Kotaku released an article featuring a Nintendo employee who claims that THQ, the publisher behind DOA Dimensions' Australian release, hadn't provided adequate information to the country's classifications board, although THQ had resubmitted the title shortly after. Thankfully, this resulted in the M rating I mentioned during the intro, and with how suggestive Dead or Alive can be, I feel that this rating is the way to go. After the dust had settled, the game unfortunately didn't leave much of a legacy behind. The most recent entry, Dead or Alive 6, didn't perform super well, just to sugarcoat it, and it ended up having zero presence on modern systems like the Switch, putting an end to DOA's portable foray. With that title's sudden discontinuation, the series has entered a state of limbo, but with how Team Ninja has returned to the iconic Ninja Gaiden franchise, perhaps we can get another Dead or Alive one day. What should have been a novel yet enjoyable 3DS fighter turned into an odyssey through the Australian legal system, but hey, I enjoyed learning more about the controversy. DOA Dimensions isn't the best handheld fighting game I've ever played, but it's really solid all around, and I can't complain too much about its offerings. Honestly, I vastly prefer it to Tekken 3D Prime Edition in just about every aspect I can think of, so I recommend you check out Dimensions if the opportunity ever arises. You can't play it online anymore, but its single-player content is engaging enough to keep you entertained in short bursts, which is exactly what portable games aim to accomplish. There's no chance that this title would ever be played competitively, but if you can take it for what it is, there isn't much to scrutinize. Overall, I had a great time looking into Dead or Alive Dimensions, and I'm glad that I finally had the chance to play it, even if it was around 15 years too late. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you and your time, and I hope you had fun. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.